I also feel that they're choosing that way because I don't believe they actually think she will do anything. So why create unnecessary tension for no reason?
Donald Trump's own behavior has endangered Taiwan. Donald Trump has bombed 10 countries in 1 year. 8 of those 10 have fewer than 100 million population. 7 of that 8, less than 50%. He's picking on small players. What does that message send to other big, powerful countries about other countries that they may want to invade?
Exactly. Hey guys, welcome back. Today's debate got heated fast as Charles Blow and Emily Austin clashed over Donald Trump's relationship with China and whether his recent meeting with Xi Jinping was actually a major win for America. Emily argued that Trump deserves credit for getting China to promise it won't send weapons to Iran, calling it a strong diplomatic move that could reduce tensions in the Middle East. But Charles Blow wasn't buying it. He pushed back hard, saying China's connection to Iran goes much deeper than weapons alone, pointing to economic partnerships, oil trade, and long-term strategic support that still gives Tehran power and influence. The discussion quickly turned into a bigger argument about Trump's foreign policy style overall. Supporters say he uses pressure and personal negotiations to force world leaders to cooperate, while critics argue that many of these announcements sound stronger in headlines than they do in reality, with tensions involving Iran, China, and global security continuing to rise. This debate raises a serious question. Is Trump delivering real diplomatic victories behind the scenes? Or are these moments mainly political optics designed to boost his image? Watch closely because both sides came prepared, and neither backed down for a second.
I believe that she is just using the theatrics to make him look good in front of the Chinese media. But let's be real. If there's a big dog at any table, it's President Donald Trump. And no, let's be honest with ourselves. You might not like him, but you have to agree he is crazy and nobody wants to mess with him. And in a world full of crazies, you might just have to no, of course. First of all, our military capabilities has just been proven with Iran. We've interjected arguably in too many wars. And if there's one person who really is not in a place to be making demands, it's President Xi. So that's why I just believe it's all words. He's not going to do anything. I agree with the U.S.'s stance on the ambiguity when it comes to Taiwan. I also feel that they're choosing that way because I don't believe they actually think she will do anything. So why create unnecessary tension for no reason?
Donald Trump's own behavior has endangered Taiwan. Donald Trump has bombed 10 countries in 1 year. 8 of those 10 have fewer than 100 million population. 7 of that 8, less than 50%. He's picking on small players. What does that message send to other big, powerful countries about other countries that they may want to invade?
Exactly.
What does it say to Russia about Ukraine?
Why are you talking about all the ceasefires
I'm just saying.
You're focusing on
when you start the war and then you stop it and call that a problem.
Wait. Excuse me. None of these wars started under Donald Trump. Besides
the 10 bombings started under Donald Trump.
Obama dropped the bomb every 27 minutes.
On 10 countries?
Hold on a second,
Emily, you don't know the answer to that question. That's what the problem is.
Okay, let me just so a couple things. Joe, you've forgotten that Biden actually was routinely criticized for taking too tough a line on China and Taiwan. So the exact opposite of what you're saying.
What did he do after he was told that?
Bingo.
Oh my God, you're totally missing the point. The point is that Donald Trump
has told me.
He said
no. No. That's what he did.
Read the readout of what he said after he was told, I'm going to take over Taiwan.
Go to Google it at home. You're just wrong about this.
I pulled it up. I'll read it to you.
Okay, well, then you should read a little deeper. Second thing, Trump has done a consistent yellow light on Taiwan since he flip-flopped on TikTok after getting a huge campaign donation to the 2024 campaign, which he believes helped him win election. Third, Xi is bringing him into sort of a strategic patience détente mindset, using rare earths as a way to sort of mollify the U.S. That is not a position of strength. He's got time on his side because he's a dictator for life. And Donald Trump has hurt America's strength in the region by alienating our allies and driving a lot of allies to China.
China having all the semiconductors. And that's from a selfish perspective.
When you say that Donald Trump is always the big dog in the room, right? So the Chinese government has basically said that the Iran war is an illegal war. Xi himself
Xi is in a place to talk about legalities.
Xi himself has said that it violates the rule of law, and it is probably.
Do you realize
Can you let me finish? Or do you have a problem with talking while people talking? Or
let's just let him finish, and then you can respond.
He's also said that it risks making this the international order into a law, rule of the jungle. That was his phrase. The Pope didn't say anything like that, right? But he had all this smoke for the Pope, but he has none for Xi Jinping. He's still trying to make him his friend. He is still saying things about the United States being in decline. He refuses to say anything negative about Xi because he's a bully. He knows the Pope can't do doesn't want to do anything. He doesn't have anything to offer him. But he can bully the Pope, but he can't bully Xi, and so he has nothing.
Do you think he should?
But you say he's the big dog in the room.
If Xi is saying there's a declining nation, it is most certainly not the United States.
Well, Emily, let me ask you to respond to what he's saying, which is fundamentally, President Trump doesn't seem to be willing to stand up to Xi Jinping in terms of China's relationship with Iran, in terms of how he's described the United States' military actions with Iran. Why not?
Well, China today, if I'm not mistaken, I saw a big headline on CNN that they said Xi is committing to not send any military weapons to Iran, which is a big step. I mean, we're talking, the bar's pretty low with the countries we're discussing.
They said it last night.
Well, to that, let me just play this because Trump was just talking about this in his interview with Sean Hannity tonight. Let me just play that clip.
He said he's not going to give military equipment. That's a big statement. He said that today. That's a big statement. He said that strongly. But at the same time, he said, they buy a lot of their oil there, and they'd like to keep doing that.
That aired at 9 p.m. last night. 24 hours have passed, and the Chinese have not substantially walked it back. And I think part of me just thinks it must be so exhausting to just constantly be negative Nancy when the bulk of this summit over the past, 48 hours now has been positive. We have agreements on soybeans, on beef, on Boeing. Boeing's going to potentially get 200 planes purchased. That's about a third of the planes that they make in a year. These are positive developments, and we should be rooting for the fact that the president got some commitment on Iran. Yes, they need oil. I know that part, right?
Listen, the economic positives are there. Nobody's arguing that. We're talking about this kind of diplomatic international policies around use of force, and that is not resolved. And I don't trust first of all, I don't trust anything Donald Trump says. Definitely don't trust until this is confirmed.
They haven't walked it back.
Well,
that's not.
I want to wait until it's confirmed.
Literally what I wrote about today, sorry to self-publicize on my subtitle.
That's fine.
Which is that the Chinese do not sell military equipment to Iran. That's not the problem. The Chinese are never going to sell tanks and planes and bombs directly to Iran. He was not promising, he's promising something that is already true. What they sell is intermediate parts and systems that can be used and are used. They sell chemicals that with a little bit of tweaking can be used for rocket fuel. They sell satellite imagery which can be used for targeting. He's not committing not to do that. All that still remains on the table. And that oil he buys, that's the money that Iran uses, the Iranian regime uses to buy.
So you think this summit was a net negative for the world? You think this is a net negative for world peace?
Absolutely, it's a net. Whenever America looks weak on the world stage, when America looks,
Trump calls people like you panicking because everything's a nightmare, everything's a problem.
Even Trump is the first president in a decade to even go to Beijing.
Okay.
Oh my goodness.
So look, I mean, I think that the question is, what really are we going to get out of this? Okay. We're not quite there yet. We don't really know what the deliverables are. But we do know, and I think based on, as Bobby pointed out, we know exactly what China wants. And what they want is for us to change our position on Taiwan. They want more access to our semiconductor chips. And according to Marco Rubio tonight, he told NBC, the president didn't ask Xi Jinping for anything. We are not asking for China's help. So what are we going to get in exchange for any concessions that we might?
So clearly the gains are economic, and that's under a rubric of stability on China's terms. Here's the larger danger. If you look at the threat matrix we're facing today, it's AI, China, and polarization. And when China talks about America being a nation in decline, it's referring to our polarization at home and our isolation from allies abroad. The fact that the Trump administration seems to be increasing access to chips, American-made chips for Chinese AI, is a very big and dangerous deal down the road. It may be short-term benefit for our economy, long-term bad for national security.
And he's already done some of that.
Yes, he has.
He's already made some deals with U.S. companies to allow them to basically get carve-outs.
I just feel that China isn't really, like you were quoting earlier, like she said that Trump is violating law. She said, what is she doing? Is he taking the higher ground here? Is he the good guy in the room? Is he the litmus test? Of course not.
I think that's actually
quoting him as if that's like a credible
Emily, I think that's actually his point. His point is that you're exactly right. That they're not necessarily acting in good faith when it comes to Iran. The question for you that I asked you and that he asked you was, why won't the president say anything about that?
Here's my takeaway from this whole thing. I obviously am no fan of Xi Jinping. Needless to say that. I would still rather my president have more friends than enemies. That includes Xi, that includes
bad news
Putin.
for you.
I know. Listen, I'm not talking about our allies that don't do anything when we need them. That's not who I'm referring to, because then what's the point of having an ally if it's just for social
NATO.
clout? Yeah,
so
I know. They need to back us up when we need them.
Friendship is to make.
Would you rather Trump and Xi start beefing with each other? Is that an ideal situation?
I would rather the U.S. president have
from the World War III was promised in 2016 and 2020.
At the end of the day, this debate showed just how divided people are when it comes to judging Donald Trump's foreign policy approach. Emily Austin viewed the meeting with Xi Jinping as proof that Trump can pressure world leaders into making important commitments, especially on issues involving Iran and global stability. Charles Blow, however, argued that symbolic promises and headlines don't erase the much deeper alliances and economic ties that still exist between China and Iran behind the scenes. What made this exchange so intense is that both sides were arguing from completely different perspectives. One side focused on immediate diplomatic wins and public agreements, while the other focused on the bigger long-term picture and whether those agreements actually change anything in reality. And that's the real question Americans and the rest of the world are now asking. Are these negotiations producing real results? Or are they simply temporary political victories that look stronger on television than they do in practice? No matter where you stand politically, one thing is clear. The relationship between the United States, China, and Iran will continue shaping global politics for years to come. And if tensions keep rising, debates like this are only going to become even more important. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Trump is truly getting tough with China? Or is this more about strong messaging and media headlines? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more political updates and breaking